Hi, sweet friends. Welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to episode 134, How to Do a Year-End Life and Career Evaluation as you prepare for the next year using what I'm calling the gain theory. So I just love the end of the year because my birthday tends to coincide with the end of the year. My birthday is coming up. As I'm recording this, my birthday's in 2 days. It's December 20th. So I think it's the day after this or the day before this podcast is released. So I love that because I use the end of the year and my birthday as a time of deep reflection and growth. I really think about, everything I've accomplished in the year and the prior year and think thoughtfully about what I want to create moving forward for the next calendar year and beyond. And most people do that usually around the end of the calendar year because it's such a perfect time. But sometimes people do it around their birthdays too. So, what I want to do today is I want to give you some tools, some ways to do it this year in a way that I've learned has really supported me in creating really big, audacious goals and going to work to achieve them and have a lot of fun while I'm doing it, as opposed to old me, which would put my head down and get to work and never rest until things were 100% complete. And what I've learned is you can't achieve that way. It's just not as fun. All right. So, just one quick announcement before we get started. If you are interested in joining my Business Accelerator Mastermind, which is launching at the beginning of 2024 in January, where I get to work closely with you one on one, and you get also an incredible group of really smart people working together who are also building their businesses or side gigs, getting them off the ground. We are launching very soon, so you can get on the wait list by clicking that button in the show notes that says join the waitlist here. Learn more about BAM, the Business Accelerator Mastermind, and join the waitlist. Once you get on that list, you'll hear all of the updates as to when we open enrollment. So enrollment will be open for a short amount of time, and we are only taking 10 students through the mastermind this coming year because I want it to be small and intimate, and I want to give all of you all my attention. So we're only taking 10 students. All right, so let's get started on today's podcast episode. All right, so let's think quickly about first why it matters. Why does it matter to do a year-end evaluation? So even if you don't want to set really big, audacious goals, I think doing a year-end evaluation is really important because if you have a growth mindset, so if you're someone that's consistently thinking about, how can I do this one thing a little bit differently, or how can I make my life simpler or easier? You want to think about that as your growth, and you want to grow with intention. You really want to be intentional about how you're growing. And in my experience, the best way to do that is to really think about the growth you've had up until this point, who you are today, and who you have become throughout the years. Start from that place and then move forward. Now, there's a lot of different reasons why we start with looking at our growth first, our gains, which is called the gain theory, right? There's a lot of different ways we start with gains. One of the biggest important reasons is there's been a lot of studies to show that when you start from a place of positive instead of negative or neutral, you've already tilted your brain towards positive. It helps you be more innovative, more creative. And so it'll help you think about your goals in a way where you're already thinking more creatively about the goals that you want to set instead of feeling stuck. That's a great reason why we start with that. But there are other reasons too. So I'm going to first explain to you how or why it sort of matters to use this growth, what I'm calling the growth theory, the gain theory for growth. I'm going to first talk about why it matters, and then I'll show you how to do it. All right, so I sort of identify with this. So there's two ways to grow, okay? So most high achievers grow by sort of chasing this ideal, and I'm going to call that ideal kind of like an illusion. So, and this was me, by the way, for most of my life up until very recently, up until a few years ago. So what I would do and what most high achievers do is we set a goal and we won't rest until we achieve that goal. Nothing else is good enough until we have achieved what we think is that goal. But if you recall, I did an episode on this not enough conundrum. If you recall, when you're coming from the thought, nothing will be good enough until, and for you might be whatever goal you set, the truth is you will never be satisfied. Because if you recall, nothing will be good enough until is a thought. If you put that in the thought line, you're going to be feeling things like inadequacy, insufficiency, because it's not good enough. And you're going to be taking actions where you're overworking, where you're hyper focused on one thing. And eventually you will reach that goal and you will feel unsatisfied and you will still feel inadequate. Because starting from a place of not being good enough, nothing is good enough until, will always create that result of you're blocking yourself from really achieving that success. The result will always be nothing will ever be enough for you. It's like that line in Hamilton, if you guys remember that song, he will never be satisfied. That's similar to this. This is what most high achievers do. Now, what happens is that this goal becomes this sort of ideal version or this illusion, kind of like this what we think is perfection. Like I will, once I get this, this is the perfect version of what I'm trying to achieve. And we put that ideal version or that perfect version somewhere in the future. And it's like we go to work to chase it, kind of like if you're going out for a run. I'm a big runner. If you're out for a run and you're looking straight ahead, what do you see? You see the horizon. And you're running and running and running, and it's like you're chasing the horizon, but you will never reach the horizon because the horizon is an ideal place that is never reachable. It doesn't exist. It's an illusion. And so you will never reach the horizon. And it's the same thing with these perfect versions of these goals that we set. I'm calling them an illusion. They're illusions because you're never going to reach that place because perfection is an illusion. So when you set a goal and you have this thought that this is ideal or this is perfect or this is where I want to go, you're never going to reach that goal because that's an illusion and you will just be chasing it like a runner chasing the horizon. And what happens on the way there? You get exhausted, you probably burn out on the way there. And that's what we want to try to avoid. So, for me, I mentioned that this is how I sort of was fueled. And the reason why I want to start with this is because I know most high achievers think that they need to be chasing something to feel inspired or motivated or to be fueled. This is like the majority of my students, and it was me too. And, the big fear is that if I'm not chasing something, I'm going to slow down or I'm going to get lazy. And eventually I will become a sloth on a couch. That might not be your fear, but that was my fear that I would eventually just become like a sloth on a couch, super lazy and ultimately just fail at life. And I let that fear of laziness drive me. And it did, it drove me. And the truth is that it will work. You will likely achieve specific things doing it that way. But that way also leads to burnout. And that way is just not fun. I have to tell you from personal experience, from me and from watching all my students, it's just not fun to achieve goals in that way. Thinking that that's the way to do it is why so many people push themselves so hard to achieve something. And then they have this like wake up moment and realize that life is passing them by. Their kids have grown up, their relationships are very kind of like not very deep. And then they do this complete 180. And it's because they think there's only one way to achieve goals. I'm either achieving and pushing myself super hard chasing something, or I can't have that sort of ambition. But that's just not true because there's another way. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the other way, which is what I'm calling the game theory for growth. Now, I didn't create this analogy. This comes from one of my teachers, one of my mentors, who I love so much, Dan Sullivan. And I'm using some of his teachings, and from there I just created the game theory for growth because I just think it makes a lot of sense. So the game theory for growth essentially states that where you are going, where you are intentionally growing to, like who you want to become, in order to get there, you have to first stop and celebrate what you've already created. You've got to stop and look back and celebrate what you've already created. Doing that does a few things for you. Number one, it's a huge gut check. Wow, look, I can't believe I've already accomplished all of this. Look at who you've become today, because who you've become today is likely not who you were a year ago or 5 years ago. And then from that place, after you've celebrated who you've become, then you can intentionally think about who you want to be. How do you want to grow as you move forward? This is how I've been approaching my growth recently. And I have to tell you, I am still incredibly ambitious, but I'm not coming from a place of lack or a place of insufficiency or these thoughts like I'm not going to be good enough until. Not anymore. Now, what drives me is this deep desire of unconditional love, service, and possibility. It's like, who else can I help? What else can I do? What else is possible? That's really what has been driving me. And it's such a beautiful place to be because what I know is that right now in this moment, I am whole and complete. I don't need to do anything to be successful. I am already successful. I don't need to do anything else to prove myself to anybody because I am so happy, so satisfied, so in love with who I am right now in this moment that everything I create from this moment moving forward is just because I want to. It's just because I have a deep desire to keep being in service, keep figuring out what else is possible. What else is possible for this human brain, this human body, this human life? And I'll tell you that this is a huge reason why I've had such an incredible year of growth while also centering my own needs and prioritizing what matters most to me. Because the older version of me, I'd say me of 5, 10 years ago, I would set these big, audacious goals. And then I would put my head down and put these blinders on. And the only thing I cared about was that goal. That goal was a fitness goal. That's all I'd focus on. If it was a career goal, that's all I'd focus on. Very rarely did I ever look at my life holistically and really think about everything that mattered. Very rarely did I ever prioritize my own needs, like sleeping, resting, my mental health, my spiritual health. And very rarely did I ever prioritize my family or my marriage. And that is just, I have done a complete transformation and turnaround. And this year, I'll tell you, has been one of the biggest transformative years in my life. And I'm also at my peak mental, physical, and spiritual health. I sleep at minimum 8 hours every night, and I meditate at least 20 to 30 minutes every day. My marriage is beautiful, it's intimate, it's fun, and I have a super solid relationship with my kids. And, I've also prioritized in-person friendships. I used to have a lot of friends in the past, but they were all over the world. Nobody near me, nobody nearby in like my own zip code. And that's something else that I've really intentionally built this year. And so I share that with you because I want you to know that that's what's possible for you. It's possible for you to also set these really big, beautiful, audacious goals and not lose yourself in the goal, but instead use it as a way to grow that's fun, where you can also see what's possible for your human life, for your human potential, for your brain, your body, your spirit, what's possible for you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how we do this. So how do we use how do we use the gain theory for personal growth? All right, so the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to start by celebrating your personal growth gains. So what you want to do is you want to think about, okay, you can do this 1 year. So you can look back at the beginning of the year and you can say, who was I then and who am I now? And what has changed for me? If you are stronger, if you had a career transition, career growth, if you have a closer personal relationship with somebody, look at all of those growth potentials and notice who you have become. So I'm going to share for me a few of the things that happened for me in case it's helpful for some of you. So I will first start with this caveat that this year has been a uniquely transformative year in my life, so much so that I geographically moved across the country. And not all my years of life have been as transformative as this year has been. This is, the first time in 10 years that I've moved across, that I've had this big geographical move. So I have moved across the country. I've also really leaned into my intuition. My intuitive gifts have opened up for me just tremendously. I've also had a huge year for my business growth, and I've really leaned into some really fun, like physical health, kind of like strength goals. So it's been a really big year for me. So, but not all my years are like this. And so I don't want you to use that example against yourself. I'm just sharing a few things in case it's helpful as we're continuing, as I'm walking you through these examples. So think about your growth opportunities or your growth areas. Where did you grow over the last year? If it's helpful, think about the last 1 or 2 years. And I know for some of us, we think that maybe for the last year, I didn't do enough. I didn't grow enough. I haven't done enough. And, I was just working with one of my clients, my coaching clients, who's this incredibly brilliant physician executive. And we were doing this exercise as a wrap up for the year for him. And he was like, well, I don't know. I haven't done enough yet. I don't even know what to celebrate. And I thought it was really important for him to say that because if that's what you're thinking too, I want you to just notice that that's the first thing your brain offers you. That's an illusion. It's the first thing your brain offers you. It's an illusion. It's something you've probably been practicing for a long time, but it doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it true. And when I got him to be super clear, I was like, hold on, let's get nitty gritty here. Tell me about your marriage. Tell me about your relationship with your kids. Tell me about your physical health. Tell me about jobs, careers, all of those types of things. All of a sudden, things started opening up for him, and he had a big list of wins for the year. So I want you to do that for yourself too. Don't let your brain do what it does by telling you haven't done enough to celebrate. Really get nitty gritty and allow yourself to celebrate your growth. It's a really beautiful place to be when you celebrate your growth. Okay, so once you've listed those things down, kind of like what I listed for myself, what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, well, who did I have to become to achieve these goals? Who did I have to become to allow myself to move across the country, to allow myself to allow my intuitive gifts to open up for me, to allow myself to have such a big growth in business? Who did I have to become? So you ask yourself that same question. Who did you have to become to improve that personal relationship or, meet that health goal? Maybe you lost a few pounds this year, whatever it is. Who did you have to become to do that? So for me, one of the biggest things I had to become when I decided to move across the country is I had to become somebody that was really comfortable with expansion and travel. I love traveling across the world and the country, but I also had this mindset that I had to stay in California because that's what Latina daughters did. They stayed super close to their family. And I wasn't even living that close vicinity to my family. In all honesty, we were many, many hours away in California because California is a really big state. But I still had that thought and it was really blocking me. And what I realized is, holy smokes, like if I move across the country and get on an airplane to come home, it's the same amount of travel as if I got in my car and drove home. It's really just this illusion of boundaries and this illusion I had that just because I'm in one place, I'm quote unquote closer, which really wasn't the case at all. So, who do you have to become? Who did you become? And really think about that. So, when I was doing this for my client, one of the things that came up for him, which I thought was so interesting, is who he wants to be next. So, who he wants to be next. Because, and that's what we're going to do as our next step. But before we do that, let's talk about who he became. So, he said that he was really successful at his job because he was available. He was always available and he was really nice. And so people felt really safe coming to him because he was always available. So we're going to come back to that in just a second as we think about who he wants to become. And for me too, the other reason why, who I became to allow my business to grow was someone who wasn't afraid of expansion, was someone who really leaned into taking courageous action. All right, so now that you have your list of your wins and your list of who you became, so what did you let go of and who did you become? Maybe you let go of this concept of people pleasing or of setting boundaries or a fear that you couldn't achieve a certain thing or the illusion that you would never lose X number of pounds, whatever it is that you had to become. Okay, once you do that, the next step then is to think about what you want to create next year. What is it that you want to create in the future? Now, before we do that step, one last thing. As you're thinking about what you created, I think it's really important to be very holistic when you think about your goals because you are multifaceted individual with, you have personal relationships, You have, of course, you have your career and your business, but you have also your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health. Maybe you have dreams to travel the world. Maybe you do travel the world. So you're an incredibly multifaceted human being. So when you think about your personal growth for the year and you're celebrating that, really take some time to celebrate all of you, not just one or two areas of you, but all of you. When I was doing this in the past, one of the things I would only do is celebrate my career growth. And once I started looking at my life holistically, guess what? My life expanded because what you focus on, what you put attention to is what will grow. And so I started thinking about my life really holistically, and then my whole entire life started to expand. And it feels very expansive now, very beautiful place to be. Okay. So now let's go on to this step 2, which is think about what you want to create next year. So when you think about what you want to create next year, again, I invite you to be very holistic. Be very holistic. So if you are already in a really good place with specific areas in your life, then it's okay to focus on something else, but still think about, put it down, be intentional, say personal relationships and say, I feel really good about where I am right now, but I want to focus on XYZ or something else right now. So make sure that you're thinking about all the areas in your life. So maybe personal relationships is an example I gave. Some more really common examples are careers, business growth, physical health. Maybe it's travel. Maybe you want to be someone who reads a ton of books next year. Whatever it is, come up with your goals of who you want to be next year. So again, when I did this with my client, and we thought about who he wanted to be, we first had to think about who he was in this moment. Okay, so who he was in this moment. So again, he said he was somebody that was always available and always nice. And so people felt safe coming to him. Now, when I thought about that, I said, okay, well, what got you to where you are right now is going to keep you where you are right now. What got you to where you are now is not going to get you to your next evolution or to where you want to be. And that one saying right there, I think for a lot of people, it's like, holy smokes, I've got to let go of something. Because if you have been feeling stuck, it's probably because you're holding on to something you haven't wanted to let go of. Because honestly, again, what got you to where you are today, the habits, the thoughts, the feelings, the relationships, that's not going to help you get to your next evolution. So for him, for example, he said he was always available and really nice. So what's the shadow side of that? The shadow side of that, or what's going to keep him stuck and not allow him to evolve, was the fact that he never set boundaries, was the fact that he always said yes and was a people pleaser, was the fact that he had no downtime to allow his mind to expand and explore where he wanted to go. He had no downtime for creativity or for being with himself, really. And that was what's going to keep him stuck. It's what was going to keep him there. And that's not what he wanted. He really wanted to expand. So now I want you to think about who you want to become in the next year. For me, for example, 2024 is going to be an incredibly big year for me in my business. I feel super, super blessed because I've created some great habits for my mental health, my spiritual health, my physical health. And for me, I listed those things for sure because I want to continue to nourish myself, my body, my mind, my spirit, because who I'm going to become in 2024 will not happen if I'm not also rejuvenating myself and continuing to nourish myself and give myself what it is that I need. So again, for me, 2024 is going to be a really big year in my business. I'm improving my programs. I'm offering a ton of more support for all of my students that are inside the journey. And so once you have your goals of who you're going to become in 2024, the next thing you ask yourself is, who do you need to become? Who do you need to become to achieve those goals? And when you do that, the flip side of that is, what are you letting go of? What are you not taking with you? What's not going to be in service of who you are becoming in the next year, of what goals you are achieving in the next year? What are you leaving behind? So for me, for example, for my really big audacious goals, I need to have dedicated time for creation, to be in creation mode, and I need to have dedicated time to rest, to rejuvenate, to rest. What that means is, if that's who I need to become, as someone who has dedicated time for creation and rest, I have to be super thoughtful about what I say yes to and have to get really comfortable saying no. because this fear of saying no, which for me is something I'm leaving behind, which is a fear of disappointing other people, got to leave that behind. That cannot come with me to my next evolution. I have to be really comfortable saying no. And I have to let go of this old story that in order for me to be successful or a good member of society, I had to be overworking all the time or always be busy. That is not coming with me into my next evolution. So I'm letting go of the guilt of overworking, this guilt associated with not working enough, right? This old limiting belief. So I want you guys to think about what you're taking with you. Another big thing I'm taking with me is I'm taking with me decisive and courageous action. I got to make decisions, I got to stick to them, and I got to take action. So, what I'm leaving behind is the fear of taking bold actions, instead of questioning myself or thinking, should I do this or pushing things off? That's just not going with me into the next year. It can't, it's not part of my next evolution. So, I'm taking with me boundaries, decisive action, and dedicated time for creation and rest. And the other big thing I'm taking with me is fully grounding myself in my authenticity and integrity. Because I know that as my business grows, I want it to continue to be a reflection of my values of compassion, of service, of fun, of disrupting the status quo, of allowing people to heal. That is definitely coming with me. So, what I'm leaving behind is the fear of people pleasing, right? It's like thinking I needed to be somebody else or that who I was wasn't good enough. All of those old thoughts that were still sort of lingering. I've let a lot of that go, but some of that was still here. So I am leaving all of that behind. And instead, I'm leaning into who I am becoming to achieve the goals I want to achieve for 2024. So I want to invite you to do the same thing. Really think thoughtfully about who you want to become as you lean into your goals. And again, I'd recommend that you do this for all the areas of your life where you're looking to grow, for family, for relationships, for friendships, anything that you're looking to grow. Because I also have some super fun health goals too, around getting faster or stronger. I have been training a lot with, I run a lot, been training a lot, just trying to get faster. I'm not really running a race or anything. I'm just doing that because I'm trying to see like how much faster can I actually get. So I've been training my body, running intervals and super fun. Same thing with strength, like really doing like intentional weightlifting to really strengthen up and tone my body. So I have some, and I call them fun because they're fun to me. Just really, again, it's like, what else is possible? This is so fun. So maybe for you, it's books you want to read, trips you want to take, dates that you want to take your kids on, maybe, or dates with your significant other. Those types of things are also super fun to include when you're thinking about who you want to become in the next year. Okay. So let's just review. What we've done so far is we've reviewed our personal growth, the gains that we've had from this last year. And if you want to go from your last big transition, maybe it was 5 years ago or 2 years ago, that's fine too. But really, what you want to start with is focusing on everything you've accomplished to this point and start by celebrating your personal growth gains. And then you want to think about who you want to become next year. So, what goals are you setting? And consider your goals holistically: career, business, relationships, friendships, health, whatever it is. Maybe it's mental health. Maybe you want to meditate every day starting next year. And remember, you don't have to wait till next year to start. You can start tomorrow. But the point is that you have your goals that you want to set. And once you do that, then you think about, who am I going to become? Who do I need to become to achieve these goals? Who do I need to become? And what do I need to let go of? So once you've gotten really clear as to what you want to let go of, here's a few things that you can do that are kind of fun. And one thing you can do is you can write down all the things you're letting go of. And then you can, if you want, you can engage in a very beautiful ancient mystic tradition of burning. It's a burning ceremony. So, burning ceremonies are something that's been passed down from centuries to centuries, and it's what many ancient traditions would do because fire is portrayed as this powerful symbol of wisdom, of knowledge, of passion, and of purification. So, a burning ceremony, what you would essentially do is you would use it as a way to release the past, release old negative energy, old resentment, hurt, grudges, regrets, suffering, anything that you don't want to be anymore. You can write it down on a piece of paper. Once you write it down on a piece of paper, and by the way, I'm going to encourage you to also include any resentments that you're still holding on to. Anyone that you haven't forgiven yet, you want to consider putting this on your piece of paper as to what you're letting go of. Because all of those things, resentments or people you haven't forgiven, those things are still keeping you hostage. It's not doing anything to the other person. You're not hurting the other person. You're just hurting yourself. And if you think you need to hold on to that because you're trying to prove something or the other person hasn't suffered enough, I want to remind you that you're the only person suffering when you're holding on to those things. So write all those things down. And once you write them down, you find a very safe place to burn them. If you can go outside, go outside. If you need to do it in a bathroom, so you can put it in a bathtub, you can do it then. And you want to write them all down on a piece of paper, fold that piece of paper into a tiny little square, and then you set that little piece of paper on fire. And you can borrow this saying if you want. It's kind of like a little prayer, which is, I release these old ways of being. I release this negative energy and these old habits that no longer serve me. I release them into the universe. In their place, I welcome in my new ways of being that will support my transformation for love and light and to be in service for the highest and greatest good of all. That's a prayer that I created for myself when I do my own burning ceremony. So please feel free to borrow and use it for yourself. So you can go back and listen to that again. It's, I release these old ways of being, this negative energy, and these old habits that no longer serve me into the universe. In their place, I welcome in my new ways of being that will support my transformation for love and light and to be in service for the highest and greatest good of all. All right, sweet friends, let's wrap up. So again, I'd like to encourage you to not just use this gain theory once a year, really live your life in the gains, live your life in your gains. Imagine how much more fun life would be is if instead of you running forward, hyper-focused all the time on this horizon, you would allow yourself to turn around, backpedal a little bit, look, taking the view of everything you've already accomplished and celebrate that on your runs. Really just celebrate that in your life. If you, for example, set monthly goals or quarterly goals, you can use the gain theory to evaluate, at the beginning of the start of the next quarter. When you're reviewing your quarterly goals, use the gain theory. I do this even at the end of my workday. So I've started to practice living in the gain theories at the end of every workday as part of my own cleansing ritual. So when I'm leaving work to transition to family time, I want to celebrate my gains for the day. And I want to release any illusion or any limiting beliefs that I haven't done enough. Because I know that if I take that energy with me, it's not going to allow me to be who I want to be when I'm with my family, which is present and fun and joyful and like a kid again. I have young kids and it's so fun to see the world through their eyes and just play when they want to play. So I again invite you to live your life in the gains and really use this exercise every day if you wanted, at the end of your work days if you wanted, at the end of your quarters, and definitely at the end of your year. All right, sweet friends, I am sending you all so much love as we wrap up this calendar year. I have, I think, at least one more podcast episode coming out where I will be sharing some reflections of my growths and my biggest takeaways of the year as I usually reflect around my birthday. So that is coming up in about a year. In about a week. Hope you enjoyed this podcast episode, and I will see you all very soon. Adios. I will see you soon.